And we're back to the Melbourne jail. Episode 3. We left off with the slum threat, which was a vehicle to understand the social and cultural significance of contamination, pollution, and how that drives moral panic, overreaction to social problems that are turbulent and are oftentimes met with grand, ambitious plans to eradicate society from a particular threat, and that is one of the many origins of the prison. Let's continue. Here we have the punishment cells. Let's gaze at this gaping hole in the bottom of the frame. Let's do some exploration. The punishment cells, this recently revealed space, was the entrance into the lowest level of the now demolished female cell block. So the conservationists and curators of the Melbourne jails stumbled upon this compartment, which speaks to how prisons have an inner atmosphere that is insulated from wider public inspection. They are secret places, and even those secret places have secret places inside them. Let's continue. Both the male and female prisoners were locked in these punishment cells with no windows for days at a time. The purpose of these cells was to break the prisoner's spirit, total sensory deprivation. No light, sound, no human contact, limited food. The hole, as it's commonly referred to. Sensory deprivation. Solitary confinement. That practice in the field of incarceration is exceedingly controversial because long-term, prolonged solitary confinement can produce deep, long-lasting psychological harm. Sensory deprivation. So the curators were quite keen to recognize this term of sensory deprivation and inject it into their description of the punishment cells. Now, the cat of nine tails. I've spoken about the cat of nine tails in a couple of other lectures in this series. The Hyde Park Barracks in Sydney, the Clink in London and elsewhere. And as I write in my book, Escape to Prison, one of the many motives of penal tourism, of why visitors go to these institutions for recreation or education, or a combination of both, is to engage in safe contact. And that is, they like to deal or come within proximity of something that appears to be dangerous. And the safe contact refers to engaging in something that appears to be dangerous without inflicting harm. Safe contact. And the cat of nine tails has a history that can be traced back to the British Navy. And this instrument with the long handle, as you can see, there's an illustration in the backdrop of how the how the guard is whipping the prisoner who is bound by his wrists, his feet, immobilized. And these strands sometimes were oftentimes decorated, if you will, with metal stars that at the end of these strands could catch the flesh and deliver even more brutal floggings. Safe contact. Cat of nine tails. The reason why it's called the cat of nine tails is because it leaves cat-like scratches. The British Navy, oftentimes this instrument was kept in a canvas bag. So don't let the cat out of the bag. That's the origin of that phrase. He's a marked man. These scars cannot be wished away. They are permanent. A marked man. There's not enough room to swing a cat. The British Navy, the floggings oftentimes were taking place on deck because in the hold, in the basement, if you will, of the ship, there was not enough room to swing a cat. Culture figures prominently in punishment. Let's magnify a little bit more. The cat of nine tails was so called because it left a mark like a cat scratch on the prisoner's back. The courts could sentence a person to prison with an additional punishment of flogging, whipping. Prisoners could also be flogged for offenses committed in the jail, such as swearing, abusing a warder, or attacking a fellow inmate. Now, this is a drawing. We're going to take another look at this drawing of a flogging by a convict. Okay, let's magnify this. Let's take another look. Now, this is a drawing, but it gives us enough information to understand that this is a brutal form of corporal punishment. Assaulting the body. In previous episodes, we talk about the theory of the body, which is the target of power. Michel Foucault talks at length about the theory of the body, and in other episodes we're going to return to that, but this is a nice reference to it. This gives us an idea of the prison cell. What you cannot see is there is a window, just one window, which is not at shoulder height. It's actually much higher, and the reason why they put these windows further up in the interior design is borrowed from the cathedral. The idea that people have to look up to see out of a window rather than straight ahead. Looking up is almost a form of religious adoration, to look at the heavens above. And these are penitentiaries. The term penitentiary comes from penance. They are serving a penance. And that's very much part of the early American penology through the Quakers, but also in England, that was then transported, if you will, to Australia. And this particular cell is 9 feet high, and then the dimensions of the floor are 9 feet by 5. So they have a sleeping mat and a stool. What you cannot see here is a chamber pot that would be used for sanitation as a toilet. Museum studies figure prominently in my analysis. Oh, incidentally, I just noticed. Here's an example of the window that I mentioned in the previous cell. You see, it's located much higher up. In many of our homes and apartments, the window is waist high or shoulder high so that we can actually gaze outside. Here you have to look up. once again, this sense of adoration to the heavens above us. The omniscient deity. Yeah, you can inject that notion in this panel as well. Now, museum studies figure prominently in my work, because I study prisons, but I also study former prisons that have been refurbished and repurposed as prison museums for penal tourism. But before there was a museum, namely the British Museum, the monarchy had collection of items that were taken from colonial lands, from Africa or Asia, for example, and they'd be brought back to England. They'd be put in a cabinet called a cabinet of curiosity. And that is the precursor to the museum. The museum became a cabinet of curiosity on a grand scale, where you can walk around the British Museum and you can see items from Africa, from Asia, and elsewhere. Now, this is a reminder, at least to me, that the cabinet of curiosity is still very much part of the performance of the storytelling institution. You see these various items, and these items have a relationship with each other, not only due to proximity, being next to each other, but thematically they have a relationship. And I'm pausing there and now because part of the performance in these storytelling institutions is to create a sense of suspense so that expectations can begin to gain traction. What is going to happen next? What are those items in this cabinet? What were they used for? We need more information. We want explanation. And you know what? I'm not going to give it to you in this episode. You are going to wait and just gaze at these items as I go back to my kitchen and get another cup of coffee.